I love The Last of Us. I first played it on the PS4 via the remastered edition and loved almost every minute of it. The gameplay was fun, but that wasn't the main draw. There was a beautifully designed world showing the effects of 20 years of the apocalypse and arguably the best story in video game history. The majority of the game is just time spent between Joel and Ellie as they travel across the United States to try and find a cure for the infected. If you're watching this video, you probably already know the story, so I won't go too in-depth into it. The point is, it instantly became a classic for so many reasons. While I believe no game is 100% perfect, The Last of Us came pretty damn close. I was ecstatic when we got an announcement of a sequel and pre-ordered the game as soon as I could. We knew that the main character would be an adult Ellie and that it would take place 4 years after the first. The game looked beautiful and played really well, but there were some big issues. Spoilers for the story in The Last of Us Part 2. If you haven't played it or just don't want it spoiled, click off this video now. Alright, the issue started when Joel, who is a beloved video game character, was killed off early on in a brutal way by a brand new character. No one was happy about this, and fans were even more upset about how it was handled. It just seemed like a slap in the face. Or, I should say, a golf club to the head for the millions of fans of the first game. The story went downhill from there, with the game becoming a revenge fantasy and then forcing the player to play as Abby for a long stretch after Ellie and her finally meet again. The time jumps were jarring, and the structure of the game didn't help its pacing. The first game was about hope and building an emotional connection in a world ravaged by the infected. Joel went from being closed off and empty to building a father-like connection to Ellie 20 years after he lost his own daughter. The ending showed how much he cared about her. The second game lacks all of this. It's like Neil Druckmann, who was a creative lead behind The Last of Us, just hated Joel and wanted to take him out of the game to shift all the attention to Ellie. Instead of telling a story with subtle messages and emotional depth like in Part 1, Druckmann made it his own revenge thriller filled with overt, heavy-handed themes. It seemed like he didn't care about what the fans wanted and focused more on his personal vision. This left Part 2 with mixed reviews and growing disdain for Druckmann. While the gameplay and visuals were as good as, if not better than the original, the story felt like a shell of what it once was. And unfortunately, the HBO show seems to double down on many of the narrative choices that upset fans in the first place. We may not even get a Part 3, but if we do, I don't expect much, unless Naughty Dog changes its approach. That said, there are still ways to save the series and give it the ending we and it deserve. So what can Naughty Dog do to make Part 3 better? To bring the franchise back from the brink and restore the emotional impact that made the original so unforgettable. First and foremost, they need to get back to character-first storytelling. The Last of Us worked because it wasn't trying to tell a grand, sprawling tale about the apocalypse, it was telling an intimate story about two people trying to survive and find meaning in a broken world. That personal journey, that quiet humanity, is what resonated with players. Part 3 doesn't need to be bigger, it needs to be deeper. The writing team should focus on creating new emotional arcs, not just continuing the cycle of revenge. Revenge already ran its course in Part 2. If Part 3 wants to move forward, it has to explore new emotional territory. The grief, the forgiveness, the legacy, the redemption. Let the characters deal with the consequences of their actions from Part 2, but don't make those consequences the only thing driving the plot. Instead, let it be about rebuilding, about trying to find hope again in a world that's chewed everyone up. Also, give the fans a character they can root for again. Ellie is still a compelling protagonist, but she was left in such a dark place that she needs a meaningful redemption arc. Let her rediscover her purpose, not through violence, but through connection. Let her form new relationships. Let her reflect on Joel, not just as a man who saved her, but as a complicated person who helped shape her identity and gave her a better life. Give her room to grow beyond being a vessel for grief and vengeance. Likewise, if new characters are introduced, and they almost certainly will be, then earn our emotional investment in them. Don't just throw them in and expect players to care because the game demands it. We need to see their struggles, understand their motivations, and watch them change over time. The first game didn't tell us to love Joel and Ellie, it let us experience why they came to love each other. Part 3 should do the same with any new characters. Another big step, stop trying to shock the player just for the sake of headlines. The Joel death scene in Part 2 wasn't just controversial, it felt almost deliberately designed to provoke outrage. Shocking moments can work, but they need to feel earned. When you kill off a beloved character, it should serve the story in a meaningful way. It should break your heart, not make you roll your eyes. And of course, tone matters. The Last of Us was always bleak, but it also had warmth. It had humor and humanity. Part 2 was emotionally exhausting in the worst way. It felt like suffering for the sake of suffering. Part 3 needs to strike a better balance. Let the world still be dangerous, but give us reasons to smile again. Show us characters forming bonds and showing some hope in this world. Give us dialogue that feels real, not just angry or grieving or stoic. Make us feel like, even after all this loss, there's something worth fighting for that isn't just revenge. Lastly, Naughty Dog should consider bringing in fresh creative voices. Neil Druckmann has made his vision about revenge and pushing his own blatant messages to get a reaction. Bringing in new writers or directors with different perspectives could help the series evolve in a way that honors the past while exploring new directions. At the end of the day, The Last of Us is a franchise built on emotion. It's about people, not just plot and gameplay. If Naughty Dog can remember that, if they can bring the focus back to human stories and connections, avoid heavy-handed messaging, and stop prioritizing shock over substance, then Part 3 could be the redemption the series desperately needs. It's not too late. There's still a world worth saving, and for millions of fans, there's still hope for a Last of Us game that feels like the original. If we do get a Part 3, it likely won't be for a while, with Naughty Dog recently announcing a new game, which in my opinion doesn't look great, but that's a topic for another video. But maybe things will change by the time Part 3 would be ready. What do you think about The Last of Us? Do you think Part 2 was great or flawed, and what would you want to see out of another game? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. This has been Danny with Game Domain.